A few things. First of all, as you know, last week, Monday, our normal lecture day, we did not have class because of Martin Luther King Day, but you can see a lecture in the week 1 module that covers material that I would have covered had we had class that day, the typical first day of class lecture. And we'll review some of that today just to make sure you have that. This class is strictly speaking a blended high flex class. It sounds like fuel additive or something for your car, but what that means is this. You have a number of ways that you can consume the content in this class. Number one is by, we have lectures 1 day a week. All right, so we have lectures on Monday from 9 to 10 in this room, BU10, whatever. BU102 or I don't know, BU something. All right, I think it was BU103 actually. It's from 9 to 10, and we have lab immediately after across the hall in BU102, and that goes from 10 to 11. Now, one of the ways that you can consume the material in this class is to do as you've done today, many of you, and show up in person. All right, so you can attend the lectures in person. All right, and that has advantages to it. Many people seem to, as we talked a little bit before class, many people feel that they focus better that way. You have the opportunity to ask questions immediately, you know, instead of like sending me an email later or whatever. And so there's advantages to being here in person. However, you have 2 other options, and you can choose these on a week-by-week basis. You don't have to give me your decision of how you're going to attend class. A second option is, you notice we have a student here who is watching this live via WebEx. So they are watching it what we call synchronously, in other words, at the same time. Now, that has the advantage is you're not physically tied to a certain location. So, for example, let's say you have the flu and you don't want to come to class and infect your classmates. I respect that, all right? You can watch it synchronously, the lecture via WebEx, and you can ask questions synchronously. Same thing as Biz being here. You know, if the person who is online has questions, you can turn your mic on and shout the question out, or you can, I know there's a raise hand ability in WebEx, or you can get my attention whatever way you want to, and I'll answer your question as though you were right here in class. So that is sort of, in a way, the best of both worlds, is you don't have to physically be here, but you do have the opportunity to interact in real time with me. The third option, let's say you work day shift, all right? You work from 8 to 4. Well, you're not going to be able to come to class, or you're not going to be able to watch it synchronously. I put recordings of all the lectures online, all right? And each module in Canvas has, each week in Canvas rather, has a module. And you notice with week 1, we have the week 1 lecture here, and it's from previous semester. So you can click on that and watch that. So again, you have those 3 options. It's described in some of these things, but some people get a little confused about this. You may have signed up for the blended class, or you may have signed up for the in-person class. You all get put in the same class. There's some people that had a little bit of confusion about that. You get all put in the same class, and then you can choose to attend week by week, whatever way makes sense for you. All right. And I'm not here to tell you which one to do. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. You know your learning style, you know your personality, you know your life circumstances. Choose what works for you. My aim is to be as flexible as possible, and that's why I offer the class in this mode, to make it flexible for the students. Now, as far as lab goes, you still have 3 choices, right? They're a little bit different than for lecture. For lab, you can attend in person. So when we finish the lecture, you can literally walk right across the hall and start lab and work on your lab assignments. And, you know, if you have questions, you can ask me right there. We can hopefully get them solved right then and there. All right. So you can attend the lab in person. You can connect via WebEx and ask me questions in real time. And you can actually share your screen with me so I can actually see what you're running into. So you don't have to describe to me what's going on. You can tell me, hey, this web page doesn't display the way I would expect it to. And I can look at it and give you an answer. That's also in real time. All right. The third way, of course, would be to work on the lab on your own time and email me questions. Now, again, this is also a mix and match thing, right? If you come to lab, you can still email me questions throughout the week. All right. I'm pretty, what would you say, diligent about answering my emails. So usually you'll get the answer within one day. The exception to that might be the weekend where, you know, I'm slacking a little bit and I might, for example, I didn't check my email yesterday. All right. But even over the weekends, I generally check my email. So there's three ways that you can get your lab assignments done. Now, at some point, many of you will need to email me a question, regardless of whether you come to lab or not. There's a few things I ask you to do when you email me a question, and they're included in the syllabus. Zip up all of your files. So if you have, later on, we're going to study images, we're going to study CSS files, we're going to study HTML files, zip all of them up. The best bet is to put everything for an assignment in one directory. Make sure you know where that directory is and zip it up and attach it to the email. Give a complete and specific description of your issue. And you can include screen captures if they help explain the issue. For example, if you tell me this page doesn't display the way I think it should, you know, how can I answer that question? You know, I don't know how you think it should display, you know, but if you say something like, I expect this paragraph to be blue and it's green, that's something that's tangible and I can look at and come up with an answer for. So phrase your question as specific as possible. All right. Do not upload your assignment to the Dropbox unless it's ready to be graded. So I am fairly casual about late assignments if you're working with me on it. All right. So for example, if you're having a problem with something in the assignment and the due date's here and you're still working through the problems and you're emailing me and we're going back and forth trying to figure out the problem and get it resolved, don't turn in a copy that doesn't work. Wait a couple days until you get a finished copy that really works and really looks good and turn that in. And I'll be lenient, very lenient. I most likely under that circumstance would not deduct at all. All right. So I would rather you wait a little bit and turn in something that's good as opposed to rushing to turn something in by the deadline and have it not be complete or not be good or whatever. All right. Now, I will say late assignments are a way for you to check yourself in this class. So if you're turning in the assignments on time and you're getting full credit for that, you know you're in good shape in this class. All right. Keep up the good work. You'll finish probably with a very good grade. If you start falling behind, though, that kind of thing can catch up to you. All right. So if you have an assignment here and there a day late because you had the flu or because you went out of town or whatever, it's no big deal. If, however, each assignment is late, and especially if each assignment starts getting later and later, then that's a sign that we need to do something to get you back on track. And that might mean you working a little harder, putting in more time. That may mean you coming to class instead of watching it online. That may mean any number of different things, you know, emailing me more questions, talking to me about what the issues are and trying to work our way through them. So if you're continually late, then you might look and you can talk to me about what we can do to get you back on track. All right. Because I can be as flexible as I want to be 15 weeks out of the year. right? 15 weeks out of the semester. But when it's due at the end, it's due at the end. There's no tomorrow. It's like a sudden death playoff game in football. That's it. I mean, it has to be in by that time. So I can be flexible throughout the semester, but at the end of the semester, the deadlines are much more rigid. A word about my lab/office hours. You are welcome to attend any of my lab sessions for any of my classes. So if 10 to 11 doesn't work for you, you have something else going on or whatever, or, you have to rush to your job or whatever, you can attend either in person or online to any of my lab sessions. So the lab sessions are really kind of office hours as well. So the times are BU 102 from 10 to 11. That's the lab after this class. I also have a lab 2 to 3 in BU 210, 10 to 11 on Tuesday in BU 210, and Tuesday 2 to 3 p.m. in BU 210. So I aim to give you as much opportunity as possible and to be as flexible as possible as far as you getting the assistance that you need in lab. Come to lab online, ask me questions online. You don't have to pick one of them. You can mix and match. You can do all of them in a given week if you want to. You could show up for lab today. You could show up online for lab tomorrow, and you could email me questions on Wednesday. All that's okay. All right. I want to maximize the contact with you. If these office hours don't work for you, and you have a bigger question, like a question that's going to take a little time to resolve, then we can arrange another time. This being a blended class, has different requirements on each of us. One of the requirements that a blended class has for me is the flexibility. So if you want to meet with me, not during one of these office hours, online or in person, let me know when you want to meet with me and give me a list of times that you're available. Give me 2 or 3 times. Like, I'm available after noon on Wednesday, before noon on Thursday, and from 2 to 6 on Friday. Give me some dates and times to pick from, and there's a really good chance I'll be able to accommodate you with one of those. All right. Early in the morning is not preferred, though. Just kidding. No, I'm not kidding. It is not preferred, but I will do it. I will do it if necessary. Okay. I think that's all. If you have any questions about any of this, let me know. The rest of the stuff I think I covered in the recorded lecture last week, and read the syllabus, read about the project, and so on. So we started with the course material last week in the recorded lecture 2. We talked about how web pages are created. We talked about something called tags. And I had this example. Welcome to the fall semester. You can see when I don't update my examples. Fall semester at LC began on August 22nd, 2022. Professor Zeller's Monday schedule, Tuesday schedule, and so on. There are 2 ways that you can view a web page. You can view it within what's called a text editor. A text editor is a simple text editor. In other words, it's not Word or Open Office or anything like that. It's just a plain, simple text editor that allows you to enter text into a file. And if you are on Windows, the simplest of all text editors is Notepad. All right. There's other things available too for free. And we might preview these in some of the classes. To start off, I'm going to use Notepad because that's the very simplest. And if you have Windows, then that's probably the choice. If you do not have Windows, if you're running a Mac, check something real quick. There's not Notepad. All right, you can use text edit, which is on a Mac, but here's the description of what you need to do. In fact, I will put this first link, we'll post that to Canvas right now. Because I do run into some students that have difficulty with that. Put that in the wrong spot. All right. So if you are a Mac user, then use text edit instead. I am also a Mac user. I use Mac and Windows. So if you are a Mac user and you have specific questions about that, you can talk to me during lab, either in person or virtually. So I'm going to pull up this page in Notepad. I do that by right mousing on it and I say open with. It doesn't give me the choice. And here we have the HTML code. We'll review this a little bit, and then we'll go on to some more tags. First of all, things that look like this and this are what are called tags. Tags tell the web browser how to display the web page. This is the same file as this. This and this are the same file. A lot of students sometimes think that there's a text file and then there's an HTML file version. A lot of times I'll get students ask me questions like, do I do that in the text file or the HTML? There's only one file for a web page. It's an HTML file. It can be viewed two different ways. It can be viewed in an editor, which is Notepad in this example, which is what you as a web developer are going to use to make your web page. All right. It can also be viewed in a browser. And that's how the rest of the world is going to see your page when it's put out on the internet. Think of it as like a photograph versus an X-ray, right? You can have a photograph of yourself and you can have an X-ray of yourself. There's only one you, right? But it's two different ways of looking at that one person. All right, either seeing it as the world sees it or seeing the internals of it. So in Notepad, I'm looking at in developers mode, where I'm going to be editing and changing and adding to the HTML. In the browser, I'm seeing sort of the final product, how other people are going to be seeing this. So tags look like this. These are directives to tell the browser what to do. For example, this tag right here. Title, first example, title. Right? That tells the browser to put that, whatever the title is, in the tab for that page. So you can do this. You can have it open both and change it and then view the difference. So I can say something else and save it. And I can refresh the page. And now the tab says something else. All of these tags are like this, right? They're directions for the browser of how to display your page. Now there's some HTML tags that are on every page. HTML is one. Tags come in pairs, starting tag and an ending tag. The starting tag says where that tag begins. The ending tag says where it ends. So in this case, from here to here is the title. If I messed up, I put the end title tag over here, guess what? The title in the tab is going to be a lot longer than it ought to be. Because you said here's where the title starts, here's where the title ends. Browsers can be nested or tags rather, can be nested within each other. And nested simply means that one tag can be inside another tag. So for example, in this case, the title tag is supposed to appear in the head section. This is a head section. Right now, the only thing we're going to put in the head section is the title. But notice that the start and ending tag here inside, in between the head start and head end tag. That means it's properly nested. If I would do this, that would be incorrect, because the tag starts within the head tag but ends outside of it. It ends after the end. Now there's about 3 tags that appear on every page. The HTML tag goes around everything in the web page. The head section contains the title for now, and it will contain some other things later. And the body contains the bulk of the web page. In other words, all the stuff that's inside here is the title. All right. So you're always going to have an HTML tag. You're always going to have a head. You're always going to have a body. You're also always going to have a doc type, which is kind of like a tag, but it isn't really officially a tag. And that's called a declaration. That says that describes that this is an HTML document. That helps the browser understand what to do with it. So let's look at the tags we have in here. I won't spend a lot of time because they were covered in the first lecture. H1 means a top level heading. So if you were doing an outline of the stuff on this page, H1 would be the top level heading items. P indicates a paragraph. Another level 1 heading, another level 2 heading, another paragraph, other paragraph. Any questions about any of this? All right, let's look at another more extensive example. So I have a couple of pages here. This might look a little more like an actual web page. By the way, sometimes in my examples, I use this lorem ipsum, which is called Greek text. Don't do that on a finished page that you're going to turn in. So let's look at this. Let's look at the new tags that we see in this. All right. Same thing as before. We have the doc type. We have the HTML tag that goes around everything. We have the head tag that contains the title. We have the body tag that contains everything else. So far, so good. We then have these other tags. And this is confusing. I didn't make it up. All right. So don't blame me. I'm just explaining it. We have the header. All right. A header is different than the head. A header is part of the body, and it contains sort of the banner that's on the top of a web page. If you look at a lot of websites, you'll notice that on the very top of the page, you'll see a banner like this, right? Almost any page that you want to go to. Okay, and so on. There's a banner along the top of the page that tells you what that web page is. So, many pages are going to have a header like this, which contains sort of the identification of the page. Tells the user, hey, this page is about Lorraine County Community College's computer information systems programs. So you can see that when you load the page. Gives you a visual cue of how this is structured. You also have a navigation section. That is the links on the page. We're going to skip those for a minute because we're going to come back to the links, but just know we have a navigation section. Then we have articles, which consist of headings along with paragraphs and maybe links and could be images, anything that sort of works as a unit to explain one idea is an article. And we can have as many articles as we want to. So here we have 4 articles. And finally, we have a footer. Just like many web pages have a banner on the top of the page, many web pages have a little I guess you wouldn't call it a banner, but thing at the bottom of the page. And these things are typically on every single page on the site. So you could group tags together into a header, navigation, an article, and a footer. There's a couple other of these kinds of tags. There's a section tag. A section tag is real similar to an article. Really be splitting hairs if you'd say, well, you should have used a section for that. I doubt if I'd ever tell you that. A section I might use if it's just a group of photographs, because that's not really an article, right? Whereas if it was more text heavy, maybe I would use an article. There's also an aside, and an aside is where you have sort of an article that's related to another article. So like, for example, I don't know where they are in the NFL playoffs, but at some point there's going to be a Super Bowl, right? So you might have the main article about the Super Bowl. You might have an aside that talks about the city that the Super Bowl is in. See, it's not really part of the main article, because it doesn't really have anything to do with the game. But as an aside, you might say, well, by the way, it's going to be held in such and such city that, has these other entertainment attractions or whatever. This is what the weather typically is, and so on. Another thing we have is a list. This is an unordered list. And you can tell that by the fact that the tag is a UL. UL stands for unordered list. And within an unordered list, you can have list items. An unordered list is where you have things that don't have to be displayed in a certain order. For example, here are 3 topics. I could have flipped these around and displayed them in another order. It doesn't really matter, right? That's different than if I was ranking, say, the top football teams in a division. Normally you'd have the team with the best record on top, and 2 would be the second best record, 3 would be that one. The order matters, and that's called an ordered list. And the only difference between an unordered list and an ordered list is this becomes an OL. And if you make that change, instead of bullet points, you get numbers alongside of them. So let's go back to the nav like we said we were going to do. A nav is a set of links. And a lot of times, those links are in an unordered list. They're in an unordered list because, you could probably order the links different ways. You go to eBay's site, sign in or register, daily deals, brand outlet, gift cards, help, contact. They don't have to be in that order, right? You could have sign up or register over here. You could switch brand outlet and daily deals. It really wouldn't matter. So it's an unordered list. That tag goes around all of the stuff in the nav section. Each list item contains a link. Now, this link's going to be a little different than other tags that we've seen. It's going to have an additional piece of information about it. Because if I say I have a link on a web page, that's not complete information, right? A link to what? I have a link on this page. Well, okay, which of the 100 billion web pages out there are you linking to? You have to say that. So the link tag is an A tag. Again, don't blame me, you didn't make it up. A stands for anchor. And you have your start link tag or A tag and your end A tag. And between it, you have the text that the user is going to link on. So in this case, the text that the user is going to click on is the word programming. You can tell that because by default, instead of being black text, it's blue underlined text. Now, the additional information is called the href attribute. Now, the position of this is important because the href is not a tag. It's not a separate tag. It's part of the A tag. So here you have your A tag where you have the less than sign and greater than sign. And between it, you have A space href equals. Then you have where you're linking to. In other words, what's the destination that you're linking to? And in this case, you're linking to # program. The # has a specific meaning. It means the thing on the page that has an ID. Now, an ID is another attribute. You can put IDs on different things on your page to refer to them. We'll do that for CSS. We'll do that for JavaScript. We do that for this purpose. So you can identify, give an identifier to certain things on your page. So in this case, if I click on networking, notice what happens. Networking becomes visible on the page. Let me click on mobile development. Mobile development becomes visible on the page. A lot of this, exactly where it's going to display, depends on where it's positioned on the, how big the window is and all that. If I make this window smaller, it might be more obvious. I click on networking, networking is right there. I click on mobile development comes to the top of the page, and so on. So the href says what to link to, and the # programming says link to the thing on the page that has an ID of programming. And if you notice, this H1 has an ID of programming. It has an extra piece of information, the attribute of programming. An ID needs to be unique on the page. In other words, there should be two things on the page with the same ID. Just think of you with your student ID. There's not another student that has the same student ID as you do. That would cause a lot of confusion, right? Same thing here. There should only be one thing on the page that has that ID. Now you might ask, could I have put this on the article tag? Yeah, I could have. It wouldn't really matter that much. You know, it would work pretty much the same way. So this # ID is a way to link to a section of the page. We're not linking to a separate web page. We're linking to a section of the page. A href equals programming, and so on. All of these are pretty much the same. There's a slightly different kind of link. A href equals tutorial.html. Notice there's no #. When you have that, and you don't have HTTP in front of it, which we'll see an example of in a minute, then it's a link to one of your own pages in the same directory called tutorial.html. If you notice, in my directory, I have two web pages, index.html and tutorial.html. This is what links them together. So if I click on this link that says My C# tutorial, I'm taken to that other page. This page has a link that says back to home. So if we look at that page, href equals index.html. So that takes us back to our index page. A # is a shorthand for going back to the top of the page. So if I'm here and I click on back to top, that takes me back to the top of the page. If I have HTTPS at the beginning of it, then it's someone else's web page. And how do you get those URLs? You just go to the web page and right mouse on it and copy it. This says link to https://www.android.com. That will be a link to the official Android website. There you go. Final link that you can do, final kind of link, is you can say mail to and put an email address there. What that will do is that will open up the email client on the machine. Now, there's not email set up on this machine, so it won't really work, but let's click on it anyhow. It opens up mail. And we can't do anything unless we set up an email account. But assuming you had your email account set up, it would open up and it would create a brand new email and it would be addressed to the email address there. Now, notice what's true about every one of these links. Every one of these links has the A tag with the href attribute. And again, notice that that href comes before the greater than sign at the end. So it's not like this. Not like that. It's like this. I think I'm the world's worst typist. There we go. So href is the way the starting tag works. And that href can either be email, can be back to the top, can be another website out on the web, can be another one of your web pages, or it can be a section of the page. Be sure to look at this example. One of the parts of responsibility that you have in a blended class is to spend time outside of class looking at the examples and reviewing them and looking at the additional materials that are on Canvas and reviewing them to make sure that you understand the content. Are there any questions at this point? Let's say I want to make a link to Google. What would that look like? Put a link to Google right here. Well, we know it's a link, so we know this much. Okay. We know that every A has to have an href, so we know that much. We know that within the quotes is going to be the address of Google. Now, we probably know the address of Google, right? Would this be correct? Would that be correct? Think in your mind which way you're voting. Is that right or not? And that is wrong. Does anyone know why that's wrong? It's wrong because we need the HTTPS : //. If we don't put that in there, what's going to happen is it's going to think we have a page named www.google.com. And it's going to look for our web page in the same directory called www.google.com. And we don't have that. Let me demonstrate what I mean. Notice I could put as many spaces as I want to make it clear for me to read. So if I look at this, click on that, file could not be accessed. And it says right up there, is looking in my folder for a file named www.google.com. So to make it work, we have to put in HTTPS : //. And then that takes us to Google. What do you suppose, think again, what do you think would happen if I didn't have this here? If I didn't have this there, and I save it and refresh, we don't know where to click on it, right? It's supposed to be up here in networking, right? It's supposed to be right after the Cisco. But there's nothing to click on because between the start and ending tag of an A, you put the text that you want the user to click on. Now we can click on it and go to Google. What do you suppose happens if we forget this? Think in your mind, if we forget that, what are we going to have? Doesn't know where the link ends. So it considers the rest of the page to be part of the link. So if I click anywhere here, it takes me to Google. Interesting thing about HTML compared to other languages that you might have used in the past or maybe you'll use in the future is that if you make a mistake in the HTML, all bets are off. It might work just fine. Let's say I forget this ending article tag. I just get rid of it. I don't have an ending article tag. Guess what? Page still works. There's a slight difference in the way that that heading is displayed. But really, you can't tell that the page has an error in it because it pretty much looks correct. Versus other problems that you might have. Like, for example, this is a classic one that happens once a semester at least. You forget an end title tag and you see nothing for your web page because it thinks the entire web page is the title. You can see it has part of the code there. Now, when we get into CSS and JavaScript, there might be other problems as well. But sometimes if you make a mistake in HTML, it forgives you and does what you want it to do anyhow. And sometimes it gives you problems. All right, your best bet though is to always write HTML that's correct. Are there any questions? All right, that's it for the lecture today. I'm going to close out of this, go across the hall, BU 102. I think I had 103 and 102 mixed up before. That's BU 102. And you're welcome to come to lab if you want. I can answer your questions. You're also welcome to connect via WebEx if you want to go to a more comfortable sitting place or whatever. Or you're welcome to work on the lab on your own time. All right, so we'll either see you over in lab or we'll see you next week.